Hello everyone. My name's Neil Haddon and I'm here to introduce today's speaker. I'd like to start, if I can please, by acknowledging that on behalf of the University of Tasmania, I acknowledge all First Nations peoples tuning in to this art forum. In the spirit of reconciliation, the University of Tasmania respectfully acknowledges the Palawa peoples of Lutruwita, Tasmania. The university also recognises the Aboriginal history and culture of the land and acknowledges and pays respect to the traditional owners and to their elders past, present and emerging of the land on which all UTAS campuses stand. So as I say, my job's to introduce Tom Hunter. And Tom is an internationally acclaimed and award-winning artist working in photography and film. He's an honorary fellow of the Royal Photographic Society and has an honorary doctorate from the University of East London. His work is exhibited around the world in leading galleries and museums, including, of course, our own Mona in the current exhibition Name Dropping. If you haven't seen that, by the way, it ends on the 21st of April, so you must go. Tom lives and works in Hackney, East London, where he's worked on numerous community engagement projects, including at the Serpentine Gallery, Victoria and Albert Museum, the Holly Street Public Arts Trust, Help the Aged, Hackney Council and the Museum of London. He's earned several awards, including the Photographic Portrait Award at the National Gallery, London, and is the only artist to have a solo photography show at the National Gallery, with his series Living in Hell and Other Stories. His work has been exhibited internationally, including Life and Death in Hackney, National Gallery, Washington, USA, and has been commissioned by the Royal Shakespeare Company, UK, Dorky Park Dance Company, Germany, and the Serpentine Gallery, London. He's produced 8 photographic monographs, including The Way Home, Le Crowbar, and Where Have All the Flowers Gone? His work is in many museum collections around the world, including the Tate, London, the Victoria and Albert Museum, also London, the Museum of Modern Art, New York, Moderna Museet, Stockholm, the National Gallery, Washington, DC, the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts, and the Irish Museum of Modern Art in Dublin, and possibly Mona, Tom? I don't know. No, they don't know. Well, there you go. They need to get onto that, obviously. So Tom is here to discuss his photographic work, artworks, which reimagine classical painting from the golden age of Dutch painting and beyond. By taking on classical postures and tableaus in painting, Tom asks his audience to reassess how we look at and judge marginalised people and groups in society, such as squatters, council tenants and immigrants. Tom takes the maligned and overlooked and casts a golden light on his contemporary subjects, raising their profile with a new sense of grandeur and wonder. Please join me in welcoming Tom Hunter.
Could we turn the lights down a bit? Yeah, great, thanks. Brilliant.
Don't forget your mic, is it on?
I think it's on. Is it on? Can you hear me? Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all. Thanks for coming out today. Thanks, Neil, for introducing me and getting this technical stuff sorted out, which is always a freaking nightmare, isn't it? I've never been so far to do a talk. So it's quite amazing to come all this way to talk about my work. And I've never been to Australia, so I don't know how to read this out, actually. Felt a bit weird. Sorry, I feel a bit spaced out and jet lagged. So I'll get started. I grew up in Dorset, which is a small county in the southwest of England. And this is my local bridge. What's wrong with me today? Right. My local bridge, I went to school. So I went to the local comprehensive, which is a state school. And we have to travel over this bridge every day. Oh, this is really strange. Sorry. Right, I will wake up. Sorry. Maybe I should just talk about my work. I'm like crying, that's weird. So strange. What can I start with, which is straightforward? Grew up in Dorset. Let's go easy something, down the lane. So I started taking pictures after I left Dorset. I left school at 15. I'm dyslexic, which a lot of people in the creative arts are. And I worked in farming. I grew up in a very small village, and eventually escaped to Hackney when I was about 20. So I've been there about 40 years now. And it was quite an amazing place, full of poverty, full of all sorts of amazing people. And I ended up living in a squat. So it was so poor that people just didn't want to live in the East End of London then. People would obviously want to go to much more beautiful places like Australia. So everyone was evacuating and they were leaving the houses behind. And we moved in. Me and Ben, who sits there, who's local to Tasmania. He took me out last night for a drink, which is great. And there was all these incredible big houses, and people travelled from all over. So we're meeting incredible people from France, Spain, Australia, Tasmania, everywhere. And I thought I want to do something different. I was working as a tree surgeon. I grew up working in forestry. So the only thing I could use was a chainsaw at that point. And then I went travelling in America for a year, came back, and started on an evening course. And to make my money then, after I left doing the tree surgery work, I went to jumble sales on a Saturday morning and bought rubbish. And on Sunday morning, I sold it on the street at Brick Lane Market. So this is the first project I did. Just tell me if I speak too slowly. And I know I've got a weird accent as well. I can't speak proper English like you guys. So these are the first pictures that I made. So this is my friend Jeremy. Literally, and this is what it was like in Brick Lane, the East End of London. People would literally put their rubbish on the pavement. People would come down on a Sunday morning and you would get 10p, sometimes 50p, and you have to sell a lot of rubbish to make your money. I had a 35mm black and white camera with film, and I'll just take people's pictures. So this is a punter coming up to me. So I wasn't asking permission. I wasn't engaging with my subjects. I was literally just putting up the camera to my eyes and taking the pictures. And it was quite an amazing place to sort of learn photography, learn how to deal with people, learn how to communicate with people, and take their images. So there's again, and it's an incredibly diverse community there. So we're in the East End, so it's the height of the immigration, mostly from places like Bangladesh at that point. Before that, we had the Huguenots coming from France. Before that, we had the Jewish immigrants, mainly coming from the pogroms in Russia. And then the latest immigrants at that time were the Bangladeshi community, Southeast Asia. So these are just some of the pictures from a small book I made called Cafe Royale Books. It's worth... Do you get Cafe Royale books out here? You probably do. They're tiny little A4 books, and they're £5 each, £5. And you can get them really easily. They're great. They're loads of documentary projects. So I got inspired after doing my evening class and going down to the dark room and going into that putting your paper into those trays and swilling those chemicals around, so that magic of having pictures appear from you out of the chemicals. I don't know if anyone's done that. Do you do that here? It's an amazing feeling, isn't it, watching that happen in front of you, that alchemy and that magic. So I got inspired, and because I was a mature student, I don't know where they got that word from in my case, but I was accepted to do a degree course. And by that time, I was squatting in Hackney on a street called Ellingthorpe Road, which was quite famous because we had quite a big community. There's about 150 people squatting there. I think we had about 50 houses. The houses were back-to-back terrace houses, 3 floors. And we had a great time there. It was an amazing community. Obviously, we weren't paying rent. Squatting was legal then. So if you found an empty property and you didn't break in, you could have it, basically. So, and yeah, all these places were just left abandoned. So we were settlers, but we weren't taking it from anyone. There was no one living there. People had all gone off to Tasmania. So this is an article that came out in my local paper, the Hackney Gazette, and I love this one here. The neighbourhood is a crime-ridden derelict ghetto, a cancer, a blot on the landscape. Why would people want to live there? Anyway, so I thought that was such a great title. And of course, the reason why I wanted to live there is because we were homeless and we didn't have anywhere else to live, and it was a great community. So this inspired me to do this work. So I made this photographic model of my neighbourhood. So this is Langford Road, where I lived, and you can actually walk around this whole block. It's got 5/4 transparencies in the windows and photographs plastered onto the front. And that's me when I was younger. I was young once, believe it or not. And you walk around, you can look inside the windows. I had soundtracks inside. And the idea is that you become like a film camera and you can look into the whole community and the space where we lived. And it was trying to preserve this part of history which Hackney was destroying very quickly. All the squats were going. They were bulldozing the old working class communities and they were building high-rise. In this case, they wanted to build light industrial units. So I wanted to document it and preserve it before it was all destroyed. This is London Lane, the street which runs behind it. I lived in that garage upstairs there. Actually, I lived in 15 of these different houses at different times. I've never moved more than 100 metres in 40 years. If my shopping trolley doesn't take me there, I'm not going to move. So this is 94, when this work came out. And this changed my whole life, really. I had an exhibition, I showed the work, and a magazine picked up on it, Time Out magazine, and I was given a third of a page to talk about social issues, about squatting, about gentrification, and about all the things that mattered to me. So that was quite an amazing experience. It changed me from thinking art is just something you do to make nice exhibitions to have something which has a campaign and could try and save our community. I'm in that picture on the middle right, and I'm also down at the bottom. So when you first look at this picture, you just think it's a photograph, and then you realise it's actually a photograph of a model. So it works in a couple of different ways. And I realised what I wanted to do was I wanted to do sort of campaigning work. They wanted to evict us, and I thought this was such an amazing community. I thought I'd do work which spoke about our community and spoke with our community and lead the way to try and save our community. So I also did portraits, and I was working with a thing called a 5/4 camera, which is large format camera. So the negatives are 5 by 4 inches. So you work on a big tripod, you have a big hood over your head, like that picture out by the quay there. I saw some big camera out there this morning when I came here. So I dragged that around, lucky it's only on my street, and I started taking pictures of all my friends and neighbours. So this is Sarah, Jason, Camillo, and his girlfriend, who sadly I can't remember actually. This is a number 43. This is Natty. This is a warehouse that we had in between the squats that we turned into a community space. We had cinema nights, we had kitchen nights, we'd go off to the skips. We get free food when we cook it up for the whole community. We set up table tennis, and we had another sort of events room in there as well. And we had events where we had, has anyone heard of Mr. Nice? The drug dealer, the drug smuggler? Check him out, Mr. Nice. He evaded. He was the first big drug smuggler from the 60s who brought tons of cannabis into the UK. There's some great films about him. So we've got people like that that come and do talks. Asian Dove Foundation, they're a brilliant band. They came and played in our venues. We had lots of bands and different things going, different community events happening there. So this is Sarah and in her squat. This is a woman's only squat. So they all had quite political motivations. Some of them were Marxist squats, some of them Trotskyist squats, some of them were dispatch rider squats, some of them were anarchist squats. This is my girlfriend at the time, Sarah, in her lovely, warm, cosy, I'm a crafty, nice person squat. This is Jerry and Andy in their complete fucking chaos squat. And this is Mark in his beautiful Buddhist squat. Yeah. So everything from this squat is all, comes from skips, people are chucked away. Obviously the carpets is all bits and pieces. Up on the ceiling there, they've got a hubcap. So the roof is leaking because it's a garage. And we've got plastic across the roof, a hole in the hubcap, caps all the rain, and takes it from a drain pipe out into a hole in the wall. So it's very DIY. And Mark is a beautiful old friend of mine. He's still a Buddhist. I still see him quite often. And that's his space. And then, I won't choke. This sounds really bad, doesn't it? Someone said the other day, actually, I've been with my wife for 25 years. So, but I have 2 of the pictures of my ex-girlfriends, so it's not like I have millions of girlfriends. But this is Suzanne, and this is my double-decker bus. So I took a double-decker bus after I left college around Europe for about 2 years. We had a sound system. It was all the time when there were lots of people putting on free festivals, free techno parties and raves, and all the road protest stuff was all going on. So I was very much part of that sort of counterculture, underground culture. So we named our bus Le Crowbar, L-E crowbar, French, that is, if you don't understand French, the crowbar. And the crowbar obviously being what we broke into squats with. And it's also, we were a bunch of crows and we had a bar. So we were doing bars and parties all around Europe for a couple of years. So that's my bed. That's why I look so dirty. And these are some of my friends who I travelled with. There's your friend, Ben, Jane. Did you live with Jane? No. Okay, yeah. So this is John and Jane. This is in London in their trailer. This is Pat. This is actually in Portugal. So we travelled around from the Czech Republic, Germany, Italy, Austria, France, Spain. Yeah, quite a few countries. And there was quite a community on the road. This is Bush with his 2 children. I think this was in Somerset in England. This is Hannah in her site in London. And this is at a time when we had Margaret Thatcher in power. I don't know if you've ever heard of her. She's quite a not very well-known figure, but she was a fucking pain in the arse. And she really disliked a lot of the things that we were doing. She hated the free festivals. She hated road protesters. She hated the working class. And lots of the pictures that you would see in the press were always black and white, and they would say, traveller, squatter, protester, miner. They'd be black and white, they'd be grainy. So it'd be pretty horrible. I was doing well, wasn't I, for a bit? I am getting back to it. So I wanted to make beautiful colour pictures to show my friends were human and had humanity about them. So, God, I don't know what's wrong with me, Taylor. I'm going to blame it on the jet lag. I'm always normally quite good. So after I spent a couple of years travelling in Europe, how long was this whole talk for again?
Another 40 minutes.
Okay, brilliant. That's plenty of time. Sometimes I panic, I just really go too quickly. It's hard getting the timing right for these things. So we finish at 1, yeah? 20, okay, right, I have to rush, so I can speak really quickly now. Okay, oh yeah. So after a couple of years in Europe, I came back to my squat in Hackney. And this is a letter that lots of people got. So it's just a persons unknown from my landlord, which is Hackney Council. So we never squatted private residencies. We only squatted public housing. And public housing, which was starved from money from the central government, the Conservative government, so they couldn't do it up. They couldn't rent these houses out. So they left abandoned and left falling down. So we took up on the slack of that. And then the councils had to sell these houses. But the money they got from selling the houses, they had to send that money back to central government, so they couldn't keep it. And that wasn't put back into social housing. So that's my moral excuse for squatting these houses. We weren't doing your houses when you went out for a party at the weekend. You come back and you find a slob like me on your sofa. It was quite a different thing. So this is from Hackney Council, trying to get me evicted. And then I was looking at people who were talking about eviction. You know, Dorothy Islang's work with the Farm Security Agency in America. And she did this amazing documentary work on the Great Depression of America. And if you've read of Mice and Men, it's an incredible book, and this really talks about this. But this picture has become the iconic picture, which sort of shows the struggle of those people. And there's a woman and there's children here, which is really interesting. You're not showing a young man, because as you know, young men should just get on with it. They should just move to Australia or America, wherever it is, and get on with it, get to work and sort their lives out. But with a woman, you have got this sympathy for the woman and the child, which obviously goes back to maybe the Madonna and the child and our whole understanding of art history. So I set out on this project called Persons Unknown, and I based it all on Vermeer's paintings. So this is Vermeer's painting, a girl reading a letter in an open window. And I thought his work was really interesting because it dealt with a very small community in Delft, in Holland. It didn't deal with the kings, the queens, and the generals. So up until that point, all fine art dealt with the rich and the famous because they're the people who pay for it. And then the golden age of Dutch painting, it changed. They dealt with the ordinary people. And I thought that was really quite important and beautiful. So I wanted to do that. Also, the Dutch were fighting for independence. I know they weren't fighting for independence for the First Nation people here, as I saw from the statues around, but they were fighting for independence from the Spanish, who had colonized Holland at that time, and they were fighting for independence. So I saw our communities fighting for our independence from the central government. So I took on the same lighting, the same compositions as Vermeer. So this is a woman reading a letter. What's it called? This is called a woman reading a possession order. So this is reading her notice of possession order notice. So this is one of my oldest friends. This is Philippa, who squatted next door to me on London Lane, which that model was. And this is her daughter, Saskia. So I've recreated that picture, but I've changed it. And the title becomes very important. So it's not a girl reading a letter at an open window, which is very ambiguous. This is setting in a place in Hackney, talking about eviction, talking about homelessness and what that means. So this is the sort of starting point for this whole series. A Girl Asleep. I kept that same title for this one. Girl Asleep. This is, again, my girlfriend at the time, Sarah, again. Lady writing a letter with a maid. And this was called A Girl Writing an Affidavit, which is what they sent to the court. So you go to court to try to fight your eviction. And we were always fighting Australian lawyers at the time because they would always come over. They would be squatting and they would get short-term contracts with Hackney Council and they would be up against us. But we'd see them in the pubs, they'd always get it wrong and we always pretty much got off it. So thanks, guys. The art of painting. This is amazing painting for lots of different reasons. One of them is everyone just talks about the tiles and the textures and the colours and the paint. But I think it's really interesting because in the background there's a map of Holland, not a map of the Spanish Empire. So you could be hung for having a map of Holland, which is really interesting. So the art of painting I changed to the art of squatting. So this is my friends Broer and Claire, who we were squatting with on the street. They were actually at art college. Bo was a painter at the time. And somehow our whole street had become like an art sculpture with its own right, really. Became a warren. We'd knocked holes from one house into the other. All the gardens were joined up. Everyone was moving in and out and changing around. You could go off for a year and come back, and there's always be a room for you somewhere else in another squat in another room. So I really wanted to celebrate that community, celebrate what we had created, and recycle these thrown away properties that the government didn't want anymore or couldn't deal with anymore. Obviously now with huge gentrification, these houses are worth over £2 million, which is obviously another weird twist of it all. But I should say at this lovely point, I've got a happy story, we did save that community. So that work was all about highlighting the community, running the community around the bigger, wider community in Hackney, and we saved it. So we formed a housing cooperative and we saved the houses. So the people who I've known for 40 odd years are still living there. Their children have grown up there. So it's a really positive story, that. So I don't need to cry just yet again. Yay! So Holly Street. So this is my first commission that I ever did. And this was by a thing called the Holly Streets Public Arts Trust. So this is 4 tower blocks just on the other side of London Fields where I was living. And they decided back in the 90s that all tower blocks are bad in London. And if you blew them up and put people in low housing, then they'd be really happy. 20 years earlier than that, people were living in back-to-back houses, and they said, you're miserable. So they knocked all their houses down, and they put them in tower blocks. So they keep on changing their mind, which is quite interesting. So I went in there, and I did these portraits. This is Harry. I found out years later, they've written a book about this guy now after he died. He was one of the last murderers out of Hong Kong. Anyway, that's a different story. But he was a very respectable man when I got to know him. It didn't come out after he died. So these are some of the beautiful people that I met. So I went this 4 tower blocks, 19 floors each. I think there's 114 flats in each block. And I spent every week going up and down the stairs, knocking on people's doors, being told to go away. But I did get to meet people. I did a large number of portraits, 4 portraits, using a Polaroid on the back. And then I'll take their pictures, show them the Polaroid. This is all before digital. And I worked with the community on trying to represent them because they were being very much maligned in the press. You know, the reason why Hackney is so terrible is because we've got these people living in social housing. And if they lived somewhere else, like a Tasmania, they'd all be happy like you guys. So I thought that was really interesting. I wanted to show their homes, you know, even though they were horrible, some of these blocks, because the lifts were vandalised, the communal spaces weren't looked after. People had made their homes and were very proud of where they lived. So, yeah, it's warts and all, but it is, I think I gathered the humanity and the warmth of all these people who I still work with. This was a distribution flat. We used to be a part of a thing called the EU. You've probably never heard of the EU, but we left it a couple of years ago. And when we were part of it, we used to get free luncheon meat out of EU for the poor people in Hackney. We don't get that anymore. And after people moved out, I took photographs of their flats as well. And as people moved out, some people left the windows open and the pigeons decorated the flats. Only Fools and Horses, have you seen that? So it's quite a nice indicator of time and culture. It's almost like snake skins. You have these skins around you when you decorate your place where you live, and then you slip out of them, you leave that identity behind, which I think is quite beautiful. I did these pictures. And then again, I also made another model. So this is, I think the model's about this big. And the idea is you become like King Kong, you climb up and you look in the windows. 5-4 transparencies in the windows. Also made lots of little films, people, oral histories about their lives, about growing up in this estate. I had this on display for about a year last year, and then it's just been bought by the London Museum, which is what used to be called the Museum of London. It's be a whole new museum opening next year in Smithfields. So that's great. It's got a permanent home, because it's really annoying trying to keep that in your bedroom and trying to sleep. That's just some of the pictures I had in it. Okay. So I do love a bit of art history. This is my reference to art history, my shirt. I normally wear a really rough T-shirt, but I thought I'd dress up for you today. Do you know what colour this is? Everyone talks about the blue pigment in art history. Ultramarine blue, a big part of art history and painting. And I've always been fascinated by painting and the narratives and the lives behind the painters and the subjects are really interesting to me. So when this is back 98, I did my first project with the White Cube Gallery. And again, Hackney was still with this maligned area, in a city, really rough, falling apart, with this big industrial landscape on the edge of it called Hackney Wick. In fact, I've come from Fish Island on Hackney Wick, and I've come from my studio in the peanut factory. So it's great to be at Hunter Island in the jam factory after coming from the peanut factory. So I did a whole project based on, obviously, the pre-Raphaelites. And everyone knows the Ophelia story from Shakespeare, and about drowning and about nature. So this is my version of Ophelia. This is my friend Jerry. And this this is sort of my stories I was picking up around Hackney in the late 90s. So this is all pre-Olympics. So it was an industrial area where they had all the canals and all river, which were feeding the old factories and the printing factories especially. So me and Jerry cycled back from a rave. There were lots of big raves in all these old warehouses and factories. And we were putting on big parties in these places. Thousands of people turning up for free or for donations. And me and Jerry cycled back one night and she fell into the canal. So I've restaged this picture of Jerry. So Jerry's my Ophelia. And I've tipped up the camera a bit because I really wanted to show the landscape. It's not just about beauty. It's not just about these plants. I worked in Regent's Park as a tree surgeon, and I was always told by the gardeners, these are weeds, these are ugly. We need to put in roses and beautiful plants. And then all these developers always were telling us, this is horrible, this needs to be redeveloped, this is ugly landscape. And she's ugly, she's signing on, she's doing different things. So this picture is really ugly. So I really like the notion of what is ugly and what is beautiful. So this is my inner city beauty or ugly, whatever you decide to call it. So this series around that, The Veil of Rest by Millet. This is Valentina and Valentina, my beautiful Italian friends who used to do these little parties out on. This is right by the Olympic Stadium where West Ham play now. So I did a whole series. Another one by Millet, The Eve of St. Agnes, about going to a debutante's ball. And this was sort of our debutante's ball back in the early 90s. This is a massive big warehouse. Her name slipped my mind for a minute. That's annoying, isn't it? She was part of the big sound system crew. So this is before the party happened. So this place was, I think we looked at like 15,000 people in these warehouses over from Friday night till Monday morning. So this is before we brought the sound system in, before the techno started. And this was all about bit cliched, the DJ is our God and, all the drugs, the MDMA, all that nonsense of me. Oh, wow, I'm part of the universe. All that nonsense that you do when you're part of taking all those drugs. And this was that moment. So I just love this beautiful light coming through the old warehouse roof. And it gives you sort of that moment of meditation and contemplation about what's going to happen in the next 48, 64, 72 hours, whatever it is. The Outlaw. Can you see? I normally have a laser. I can't believe you haven't got lasers. I normally have like... you can see, I don't know if you can see, there's an outlaw there. And that's his outlaw, and that's the arrow. So he's been shot. So the rich people in my country, if you're starving, they shoot you if you try and get meat, which is quite interesting. So everyone thinks about the pre-Raphaelites as just beautiful redheads. There's a beautiful redhead there. But it also has social context, which I thought was really interesting. People forget about that. So I was trying to put a bit of social context into the reworking of those pre-Raphaelites. So this is my friend Paul and Yuri. This is their truck, who we traveled around Europe with. And this is in London. They had their truck burnt out, but I restaged it. This is pre-digital photography. So you can ask me how I did this if you want, but it's I'll tell you. Shall I? I used to be part of a thing called Mutoid Waste, doing some stuff with them, and we did lots of fire shows. So we're using fire extinguishers with petrol, compressed. You're firing petrol, long exposure. It's very easy, but don't tell British Rail, because apparently they get really pissed off if you burn their railway tunnels. I don't know why. The Stonebreaker, before we had social welfare in our country, if you didn't have any money, you'd have to break stones or you'd get deported, something like that. So this is an old railway line that goes through Shoreditch. It's actually working a railway line now because it's changed in the last 25 years. This is my friend Uncle John. And this Uncle John is an Elton John's photography collection, which I thought was quite funny, only to me, of course. And this is talking about the sort of ketamine, those drugs that we're doing. We used to have parties on this railway line that went through Hackney. I don't know why I showed these. These are just pictures I was trying to do to just show a sort of different face of Hackney. People just thought about council flats, about poor working class people. And as I said earlier, I'm from Dorset, and that always seems to creep into my life. Left school, moved into a caravan, worked for the forestry out in the woods, read this stuff. Has anyone read any of this stuff? Obviously not, you can't read it because it makes you so fucking depressed you want to die. It's horrific, especially Jude the Obscure. Oh my God, it's the end of that. Don't watch the film, it just makes you so miserable. You think I cry a lot, you wait till you read this stuff. But it's quite interesting. There was an article came out, and Thomas Hardy, I thought, why are you so fucking miserable? And the reason was he got all his stories, not from fantasy, but from the local paper. So they were true stories. So I thought, that's quite interesting. I'll try and do a series of work all about stories from my local paper. So I started gathering stories from my Hackney Gazette, and it was pretty grim reading, really. And then I went to the National Gallery and I was thinking about how they talked about poverty and how they talked about identity and how you depict scenes. So I did a whole series. So this is an old lady that I used to know who lived in a council flat and she was abandoned. Hiya, do you want to come in? All right. And she living in a flat where she was abandoned by the state, abandoned by the council. So can you see what these things are on the wallpaper? Oh, you probably know, yeah. Cockroaches? Ooh. They're real cockroaches. There's 1,000 of them. My missus was very pissed off when I brought them back to our flat. Oh my God. Road rage, thug jail for attack on priest. This guy gets a lot of shit in the National Gallery. And then I sort of recreated all these pictures, Halloween horror. This one comes up every year. And, you know, I was talking about the artists, the way they depicted scenes, contemporary scenes to their lives. You know, Caravaggio, who was a gambler, a fighter, he killed someone in a duel. And I think that's why he can depict these scenes so well. You know, you can really see the death in these eyes. He painted prostitutes as Madonnas. So he's really living in his time and really embracing the community that he lived and worked with. And this is on the Pembrey Council Estate, which is this notorious council estate, not anymore, but they had riots there. Gangland execution, about kids finding a drug dealer's body in my local river. And then the way, John Constable's picture in the National Gallery in England depicts this green and pleasant land of England where everyone's happy, fishing away, and it's all lovely, pastoral landscape. And this is my local river, the River Lee, with a sewage pipe over it. Can I be bothered to walk that far? But there's a guy in the tree, a kid, you can just see his face, another kid. And then my mate reenacted this. So this is Jonathan in the water, pretending to be the dead drug dealer. So I recreate these pictures. This was done in January. It's not like January here. It was fecking cold. So we had to rush him back for a hot bath. And he died of hypothermia taking that picture. I haven't killed anyone yet in my pictures, but it has been quite close. Dublin Bay. I've got so much work I could talk for fucking hours, but I'll just do maybe one more series. Dublin Bay. Supposedly my grandmother was Irish, and she was came over as lots of immigrants came to the UK. I think to Durham actually, with the miners, and then anyway, blah blah blah. So I got a residency in Dublin to do some work. I'd never met my grandmother. Apparently she died when my dad was 6, I think. And I went to Dublin. And I went down to Dublin Bay and I went for a swim. I went for a swim here at Sandy Bay this morning. That was lovely. I went for a swim in Dublin Bay in March and fuck me, you scrotum titans. So this is James Joyce at the 40 foot in Dublin Bay. And if you ever read The Odyssey, it's an incredible book, but it's too fucking long, let's face it. It needs a bit of editing. So I did all this work with a pinhole camera, large format again. I went to all these bathing places. So this is Sandy Cove, not Sandy Bay. I did these pictures. The idea is sort of like when you had this pinhole camera, you get the idea of like this pregnant belly and place where people were born from Ireland, obviously with the potato famine, and all the people being sent all around the world to Australia, to America, Canada, to London. So it's sort of, it's all about that sort of thing. Migration. Is that, I can't remember. Okay, keep on. And then when I came back, I just started thinking about my own neighbourhood with this pinhole camera. So, and like Australia, we've got a lot of immigrants in the East End, as I mentioned earlier. But you don't go into their churches normally. I think quite often you stay in your own little bubble. So I started exploring some of the communities in my neighbourhood, which I wouldn't normally interact with. So I went to, this is a Greek Orthodox church, a Jewish synagogue. This is a Baptist chapel. So this picture is obviously a mosque. And there's about 50 people in this photograph. I don't know if you can see them. You have to look quite carefully. You probably can't see them, but it's a long exposure. So this is probably about half an hour exposure. So they come in, they go up to these prayer mats, and they bow down, and they pray to Allah. And that was quite an amazing way of experience, the complete opposite way I talked about earlier, when I was 35mm camera in your face, clicking, taking, grabbing, just setting up this box in a place of worship. And then I use a sock or a handkerchief for my shutter, and then I leave it there, and I talk to the Imran or the priest, whoever it is in there, and this camera just slowly sort of brings in the atmosphere of the place into this box, does its alchemy of the chemistry over half an hour sometimes these exposures are. So it's quite a lovely antidote to that fast, in-your-face, Martin Parr type flash photography. This is a church, another synagogue, another mosque in someone's front room in Hackney. There's just a few pictures. This is actually a Masonic lodge in a hotel in Hackney, Liverpool Street Hotel, where they bricked up in the war, and then they forgot about it. When Joseph Conrad redesigned the hotel, they thought, what the hell is this? There shouldn't be a wall here. They got the sledgehammers out, knocked it out, and they found this Masonic lodge hidden in it. It's an amazing place. This is an old bandstand in the first social housing in London, in the East End. Ridley Road Market. I did some more with different communities, mostly African, and other commissions from the V&A, where I just went down one street, and then you meet in the people like the people from Thailand, the Maltese, car mechanics, and Heralded Stories, where I did another project about, again, the landscape, big social housing development in North Hackney. So talking about Christina's World, and I'm moving it around. And how you represent people. This is my friend's daughter, Roisin. I'm just flicking through these quickly. This is Angus and Noel. Angus used to get dates for his girlfriends, and he had this blow-up, what's it called, Lido or dinghy. So I went out there and checked this scene out, and it's this beautiful bit of the river or canal, and it had the amazing reflection of the motorway going over it, which is why I took this picture. But when I came back a week later, it was summer, and it had all overgrown with this incredible weed. So Angus ended up looking like Kurtz from Apocalypse Now, which is quite amazing. I did press a button then. Oh, yeah. Oops, sorry. Sorry. It's a bit, yeah. So this is based on the Folies Bergère by Manet. This is my friend Sophie, who sadly died a few years ago. And this is my local Irish pub called the Dolphin. Have everyone been to the Dolphin? It used to be quite famous for Irish lock-ins, all-nighters, and strippers. Sunday afternoon strippers, free Chris, and all-night sessions on a Saturday night. What a combination, eh? You don't get that in anymore in Hackney. And this is one of my most famous pictures, Death from Sardanapalus, which I can never pronounce. But this is quite interesting because it talks about a culture which was really misunderstood and misdescribed, really. You know, we've got Delacroix, who's talking about the Middle East, and these incredible scenes of a sultan who dies, and as he dies, he gets his wives, his harem killed, his horses killed, and it's this whole thing about artists creating a beautiful, mystical other world. And I brought that back to Hackney. So this is around the corner from me on Graham Road. This is my friend Susanna, Italian immigrant grandmother. You can see her on top, Colcolti. And then this is actually her deathbed. So these stains are the stains from the grandmother who came over in the 1930s, set up this Italian cafe, brought her culture to Hackney. And over the years, it got changed from spaghetti, coffee, and tiramisu to egg, chips, and beans and coffee. So I really wanted to bring that round to sort of talk about otherness and cultures and how you can also find everything you need in your local area. And you can talk about that, and it can be just as exotic and just as beautiful and really tell a story. And everyone's stories are just as important, whether you're, a migrant mother or you're someone in a council estate or you're a middle-class person, it doesn't matter. I think everyone's stories, wherever you are so important. And that's what the work's all about. This is the Rebel Angel. This is about a guy called the Mole Man who built all these tunnels underneath his house. You heard about this, yeah. It's quite famous. Check it out, the Mole Man of Hackney. I was on Radio 4, BBC Radio 4, talking about this a while ago. So he was a bit eccentric, had a massive house in Hackney, but he didn't live in it. So the whole house sort of caved in, all the windows fell in, the roof caved in, and he built a labyrinth of caves underneath his house to the point where he went underneath the pavement across the road. So they had to stop all the traffic, the buses, from going down the street in case they fell down the holes and down to Hades. It's fucking brilliant, that. Eventually, they evicted him, the bastards, put him in a council flat. And when he died, they took him out, and he was digging the hole behind the wardrobe, trying to find, was it Nadia? Yeah, Nadia. Yeah, and now some artists have bought it and turned it into, I'm not talking about artists. This is a film I made about immigration. It's funny, we're talking about immigration in Hackney now, and it's mostly different people from different parts of the world, but all these people look so white, but this is probably 40% Irish and 40% Jewish immigrants at that time. And then talking about the first estates in Hackney. But we're ripping down our estates now, so there's no places for young people to live anymore. Midsummer Night's Dream, I just quickly flip through this. I used to work for a community charity. We finished, yeah. And we used to, yeah. So this is me, my double-decker bus. I took lots of pictures, 35mm camera, traveling with sound systems all around Europe, which is a book, and I won't talk about, I think I've done now. Should we finish now? Yeah, I went out to Syria and I was doing some quick pictures there. Yeah, wasn't enough time, was there? You can have a quick look though. I'll just go and click in.
I'm wrapping you up.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there'll be a couple of questions.
Yeah, exactly.
Some of these folks have to be out pretty soon. So please join me in thanking Tom first and foremost. And then we do have like a minute or maybe 2 minutes.
Sorry, I rambled on so long, yeah.
No, you're right. It's very good. For any questions that you might want to ask Tom. We'll be right at the back. Can you wait for the microphone? Sorry. No.
Thank you. Thanks for that. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
In terms of community and safety and looking after each other, not just against the executive, but other forces within the community, how did that work from a safety and looking after each other point of view?
Yeah, I suppose we were talking about this last night, actually. I got taken out for a drink last night. And because you were sort of an outsider in a way, when you talked about squatting, yeah, you did always just looking out for each other. It was a very inclusive community. And those friends that I made at that time are still all really great friends. I've just been staying in Melbourne from an ex-squatter. So you were looking out for each other the whole time. So you're meant to have someone in your squat the whole time, because otherwise they could just come in, kick down your door and evict you. So there was always people around. The whole thing about it was being in numbers. And that's why it was so good being in Enfield Road. You always ended up cooking for each other, sharing each other. So there was always someone going off to Waitrose or Sainsbury's on a Sunday night to go skip diving and getting loads of food, bringing it back. And yet it's always about communication, sharing, looking after each other. So that was totally 100% important to that. And it was the same with the traveller community. You know, if you take a double-decker bus to southern Spain, and you've got, 25 quid on you, and that's what we have, no mechanical AA or rescue services, nothing like that. So you normally travel around with a few other vehicles. So someone could mend a gearbox, someone could mend a brake, someone could cook the dinner, Someone could go shopping, someone could busk, someone could run the bar. So you were a very self-contained community. So you had to be completely self-supportive. And obviously no mobile phones, no internet. So if you did break down, you could end up spending a month in somewhere bizarre, and you just end up looking after each other until you got sorted, then moving on. So you became very, very good friends with the people you lived with and travel with.
One more question.
Thanks, Thomas. Great talk and amazing work. I think it was the anthropologist Clifford Geertz who said there's no such thing as decoration, because when a kid goes to bed in his pyjamas or her pyjamas with spaceships, they sleep differently. And like over and above all the humanity, I keep seeing pattern and really powerful aesthetics. And like, what do you think's the political achievement of your aesthetic? Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, aesthetic is massively important to me. And I came out of a time in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, when lots of the political activists that I aspired to were disregarding aesthetics. It was all about text, black and white pictures, and really rejecting aesthetics for aesthetics' sake. And I was completely thought that was all wrong. I want to seduce my audience. I want my audience to engage with my images, and I want them to be part of that beauty, so they become inspired by that, and then they read the story, and then hopefully the humanity and the causes, the struggles will propel that forwards. So that's my reason behind it, and I've stuck with that. And that's the reason why I actually did the pre-Raphaelites, because when I did the pictures of the Vermeer pictures, lots of people are saying to me, well, in fact, Charles Saatchi came to a show of mine, and he didn't know who I was, and he said to me, he said, that Tom Hunter's work is really rubbish. You know, you don't mix politics and aesthetics. There's two totally separate things. And I was going, oh yeah, that's funny, yeah. I clearly ignored him. And then a year later, he bought loads of my work, which is really funny. Yeah, so I stuck to my guns. I think I want to go to a gallery, I want to be seduced, I want to be engaged with the work, but I also want to learn something, I want to be invested in a story. So for me, it's a tool. It's like a Trojan horse to get to where I want to go and to take more audience to where I go. So it's definitely a part of my artist strategy. Yeah. Thank you.
Please join me in thanking Tom once again. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you so much. And I was going to talk about the topodomatas to begin with, until I got a little boo. The next village to me, if you know about topodomatas, an incredible story. And one of them ended up here in Tasmania, so he probably ended up on Hunter Island, then working here. So